this episode, we're going to take a look at some prop bets in the NFL, like some over-unders. There's some intriguing ones coming out of Vegas. But before we get into all of that, let's take a look at some of the key matchups on the Week 1 schedule in college football. The first matchup we have takes place in Hattiesburg, Mississippi, between South Alabama and Southern Miss. What I like about this matchup is the fact that you have an experienced team going up against an inexperienced bunch, and that experienced team is Southern Miss, led by their quarterback, Jack Abraham. And I think because of that experience and that continuity in this COVID-19 environment, that 13.5 points sounds a lot like what you should bet on when you're looking at this ball game on Thursday night. So lay all those points with Southern Miss. Next matchup, we have Middle Tennessee State traveling up to West Point to take on the Army Black Knights, and Army is a 3-point favorite in this ball game, and I like Army in this matchup. Lay those points with Army. The reason why, Middle Tennessee State wasn't the original Week 1 matchup for the Black Knights, and if you're Middle Tennessee State, you miss all of the summer, all of the spring practicing for the vaunted triple option offense. That right there is not what you want to see going into a matchup. You want to face an option team either coming off of a bye or coming off of spring or summer practices. They're coming off of short notice, trying to prepare in this environment for a triple option squad. I think Army rolls in this one. We head down to Texas for our next matchup between SMU and Texas State. SMU is a 21.5 point favorite. Texas State has some moxie about them, but when you look at their defense, they were replacing a lot of key starters, and their defense wasn't that good to begin with. I know SMU's defense had lost some firepower within their secondary, but they return a lot within their front seven. And on offense, despite losing James Prochet and Xavier Jones in the backfield, this offense still has quarterback Shane Buechele, a very good offensive line, and that passing attack that can work touchdown to check down. So feel comfortable with laying a 21.5 with SMU. We have a fun matchup between Arkansas State and the Memphis Tigers, and Memphis was dealt a huge blow to their offensive attack with tailback Kenneth Gainwell opting out of the 2020 season. He was their leading rusher last year, ran for nearly 2,000 yards, and is a big-time playmaker coming out of the backfield. Their offense was replacing a lot of skilled players, and when you look at what they do defensively, they give up a lot of points. And that's not what you want to hear when you're facing an offense in Arkansas State that is returning 9 starters that average 30 points a game and has one of the best receivers in college football in Jonathan Adams Jr., the 6'3", 220-pounder that's a big-time NFL prospect. I think he's going to have a field day. Now, their defense isn't as good as what we expected it to be last year, so expect a shootout here, which means I don't think Memphis will cover. Look for a very close, high-scoring game, so take Arkansas State in the points. And finally, another team that was dealt a huge blow, this time due to injury, was BYU as they travel out east to take on the Navy Midshipmen. When you look at BYU losing their starting tight end Matt Bushman, who's an NFL prospect on the Senior Bowl watch list, that's going to be tough for their passing game down the middle of the field. Good thing for BYU, they still have a tremendous passing game outside of the hashes and down the field with their tremendous quarterback in Zach Wilson, who can escape and buy time in the pocket to find those targets deep down the field. But I'm trusting the defense here for BYU. I know I just made the case for not being able to get up to speed against an option offense, but I do think BYU is sound enough defensively and has just enough continuity on offense to make things happen. So I would take BYU and the points. See, it's a very close spread. I'm still taking BYU and the Cougars over Navy. Welcome back to Football Game Plan's Best Bets. Emory Hunt, the czar of the playbook, and I told you we will talk NFL, but mostly prop bets for this week, as next week will be Week 1 on the schedule. So let's take a look at some of the intriguing prop bets coming out of Vegas that you want to keep an eye on. One of the first prop bets that I really liked that I saw was Joe Burrow throwing over or under 3,800.5 yards. I think you take the over on that, whatever that price may be. The reason being is the fact that you look at that Bengals passing game. AJ Green, the rookie T. Higgins, Tyler Boyd, a healthy John Ross, along with Joe Mixon in the backfield, coupled with the fact that Joe Burrow is a very talented passer, a point guard at the position. I think he's going to touch 4,000 yards, so I would slam the over on that prop bet. The second one is a little bit trickier as you look at Christian McCaffrey for the Carolina Panthers, who ran for 1,000 yards last year and caught for 1,000. So he had 2,000 total yards from scrimmage last season. The question is, or the bet is, whether or not he will touch 1,995.5 yards this season. Here's why it's tricky, because you look at what's around him. They got a new quarterback in Teddy Bridgewater, a new scheme with Joe Brady coming from LSU with a new head coach in Matt Rule. They also have some additional weapons on the perimeter in Robbie Anderson at wide receiver. Ian Thomas steps in at tight end. You also have a revamped offensive line. So a lot has changed around McCaffrey to where you can't expect him to make that same number that he had last year. Yes, it's possible, but I think it's highly unlikely. So I would go under with that prop bet, because I think Teddy Bridgewater will distribute the football. There'll be a much more well-balanced offensive attack than what we saw in 2019. And finally, there is a prop bet that has the Raiders at plus 250 to make the playoffs. I love that prop bet right there. I do believe the Raiders can push for a playoff spot, and this will seem like a value right now if you take that prop bet at plus 250. I think when you look at what they have surrounded around Derek Carr and look what they have in the backfield, the defense is young, athletic, and aggressive at all three levels. The Raiders may surprise some in the AFC West, and I think if they can't outright win the division, they'll be in play for that 7th and final playoff spot. So this is one futures bet that I would love to take at plus 250. So that's it for this edition of Football Game Plan's Best Bets. Be sure to follow me on all of my social media accounts. And don't forget to check out and subscribe to the Football Game Plan Network located at youtube.com/footballgameplan. Also subscribe on iTunes to Football Game Plan Podcast. And that's where you can find our Best Bets podcast and leave us a 5-star rating.